everybody. Welcome to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim Jousma, and with me all the way in Portland, Maine, it is the Reverend Tracy. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing swell. Another wonderful day in the neighborhood of sweltering humidity and downpouring rain out of nowhere. But as always, we'll get into what's going on in my life as I adjust to a new state later. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm doing good. Had a really busy week last week in school for math class. I know not only had my second midterm, I also had to take. I had to do two separate modules within 4 days. Now, a module for online class is 1 week worth of stuff, so I had to do a midterm and two modules in 1 week period. So I still have some hair, so thank goodness for that. So it's finally over. But a couple more weeks of school, then I will have a bit of a summer break before school picks back up again. But before we begin the show proper, you had a really interesting idea that we thought it would be something we wanted to bring up to our audience. Let the folks in.
Yeah, so we talked, I believe it was just the last episode,
Mhm.
or possibly the one before. I just know it's really recent. Things blend together when you're doing cross-country moves and adjusting to life. But I knew that recently we had kind of had some discourse back and forth about somebody offering to Tim and really our podcast and our listeners to offer this kind of idea for a concept of kind of wanting to change our minds about the earth being flat. And that led me to kind of this concept of, well, there's a lot of opinions out there that differ from our own. And one thing that Tim and I do have in common that really kind of serves out well on this show, we feel sometimes, is that we can handle disagreement. We are open to hearing other people's opinions. So why not try to make a segment out of this? Now, I want to put it out there that my reaction to the particular person, which I mean, I don't even think we mentioned their name to try to at least be respectful about it.
Yeah.
But, as it was described to all of us together, was that while I am open to talking to somebody who believes that the earth is flat, and, because that's the point. If I can't see my mind changing, that should make me more open to wanting to have that discussion, not less. Because, I feel pretty firm in my beliefs. I've kind of taken my sources and stuff. So I am open to having that. But how did I put it so eloquently off air? Was that I think it needs to be with a person that just wears slightly less tinfoil hats about all of the things, but there's a lot of people who can have a differing opinion on things and be very, well spoken and respectful individuals. Like I
Yes.
couldn't take the two headbuttiness for me, but as long as we can match of like, hey, like let's go into this, not necessarily depending on the mind being changed, but everybody being open to their mind being changed and being cool about a conversation about differences. So Tim had
Yes.
his own response to that too.
Yeah, and I would definitely be excited if we were able to find somebody to do that. Now, to be clear, it's going to be, topics like the flat earth. It's going to be, yeah, I think we can even do something like JFK assassination or Bigfoot or something like that. I wouldn't want to do anything super political or anything like that. So if you got those the 2020 election was stolen craps, please don't contact us. We're not going to hear you out on that because you are wrong.
That's one where I'm just not willing to give it a platform right now. Just yeah, there's enough of that already out there. I'm sure there's plenty of podcasts that would be super happy to let you talk about it. But this is and that's where it gets fair of just we're gonna keep it a no politics zone for this one.
Yep.
Because that can be such a hot topic, and that even the people who think they can keep their cool in a conversation, I've seen them lose it when it comes to politics. So I personally agree, but it can be, we're open to topics. So we like to kind of throw stuff out there. We'll probably put a poll somewhere, somehow, or some way where we can get people to kind of pitch us anything like, hey, I'd like to hear you, and does any of you guys disagree or agree with this thing? And you think if you could find somebody of the opposing opinion, we're willing to hear it. Just don't be offended if we go, that's too political.
Mhm.
Or, I think we can respect. I don't think there's like really a lot of topics that we might turn down, but I could see some being like, yeah, let's not do that one just right now.
Yeah, too, because I mean, admittedly, with some of these groups, they do kind of sometimes blend together in with other groups that have ideologies that are not so good. That again, we're not going to give a platform to, but I'm excited. So yes, to pay attention to our social media outlets out there. We'll have some more information, and this might even be a good chance to check out some other independent podcasts. There are definitely other podcasts out there on topics like this, and that might be a great way to do some cross-platforming. Reach out to them. The ones that we've vet, of course. Not just random guys that reach out. But and you can go about it that way too. But I am definitely excited for that.
Yes, potential stuff and things.
Yes, and we'll just have to see if we can make like a new version of that meme of the guy that sat at the desk with the, like change my mind if or something like that. You've seen it, but I'm not describing it well.
Oh,
You're like,
no. I know exactly what you're talking about, and yeah, there you could probably find that very template with nobody. Well, actually, yeah, you can find it with nobody in the chair. I've seen that. And so I don't know, maybe I'll just do me and my whole clergyman regalia when it's a topic that's for me. And then we'll pick a good pensive photo of Tim
yes.
for any time it's a him topic.
Well, there we go. Now, you have been having an interesting time in Maine. Let folks in on what's happening.
Oh, well, I mean, on the more casual side of things, I'm a creative person and I need outlets and things like that. And one did happen to fall across my lap, which is exciting. It was a girl child's birthday box. So I got to work on that and get my craft on. And I think it was really creative. If there's anybody that ever needs to do a gift for a kid and, you have to ship it, what we did is basically we took the USPS flat rate box and I essentially took tissue paper with different patterns and wallpapered the inside of the box because, you can just tear it open in a little tab. I glued it and taped it all back together to make a whole box, then decorated the inside and made it special for her. So instead of it being decorated on the outside, it's decorated on the inside when she opens it up.
Nice.
It was kind of nice because we kind of did the same thing before anyway, because we're not very stuffed people. Like, we're very experienced people, which is why we're excited to, that's one of the pros of being into a vacation parent is at least we can kind of maximize some of the experience stuff that we like to do. But, we don't do a lot of the little shoppy thingies. So it's like the one time that we would. So in a way, it's the one thing that didn't have to change with this move to Maine and now being long distance parents. One thing I promised them is like, hey, I don't know for sure how to be a long distance stepmom, but I'm going to try my best. So that is one thing out there for the adjustment to Maine. The other is with the adjustment of the Mr. Reverend going back to work. We're actually going to work. It's not a back to. This is him starting his career. And he's in a job where he travels.
Yay.
And this is the first time. I just dropped him off right before we recorded. This is the first time he's going out of town. And it will be, the first of it being something that we're going to build around things like that. And it's normally just for the week or whatever. He'll be back on weekends, I guess, always. Mm-hmm. So there is that. It's not like some weird thing where he's going to be gone 6 weeks at a time, like his partner, me, like I will be in September and October. So, we've got a little bit of adjustment to happen with all of that. And I outed myself to a Mainer as not being from Maine.
Uh-oh.
Because I asked for tips on dropping somebody off at the airport. Apparently, it is a thing here. It's like, oh, it's not the airport, it's the jet port. And of course, they don't say it like that. That's just me that's my pretentious voice in my head. That's how everybody sounds. Male, female, don't care who you are. Pinky up. Exactly. The recording, I think I even had my pinky up, but it's the jet port. And so I got corrected to not call it the airport, that it is the jet port. And it is, by the way, this adorable little thing. They call it like an international jet port. And no joke, it took the Mr. Reverend like 10 minutes once he got his boarding pass sorted to get through security. Like, that's it. I dropped him off. Like he probably would have been, and like it's so close to where we live because it's so small
Right.
over here compared to in Portland, Oregon, where you can drive for an hour and be at the airport. Maybe this was like a little bit out of the way. I took him there, and I think without any complication, he probably would have been through security by the time I got home.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was super simple, adorable international jet port that I don't know. Mostly it seems to just puddle jump to neighboring bigger airports like Boston or somewhere else. But I think it's adorable. The international jet port.
It is interesting how you do get variety in language by region. Even something as simple that I found out when I moved to California about soda. Where I come from, we call it pop. It's always been pop, and in California, it's soda. Up here in Portland, Oregon, I've heard like soda pop. More people are comfortable saying that, but it is interesting the variety of language based on where you live.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of that, right? I still remember on my 21st birthday when I visited my cousins and uncle in California, and I was telling a story, and all of a sudden they just are giggling. And I just said, "What's going on?" And they just said, "Say it again." I said, "Say what again?" And they said, "Y'all." And I didn't even notice that I had said it until that happened. But little things like that. Like my mother was like born in Pennsylvania and then she was over in California.
Mhm.
So for me, I was calling it soda because a lot of where you pick up what you call things is from your early childhood development. They don't really teach you if it's soda or Coke or pop in kindergarten. Don't know if you noticed that. They don't super cover that lesson. That's more of an at the home thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you're already learning how to talk a lot from home. So that's where that came from. So that was one thing that, in Texas, it's Coke. I was like, no, no, no. If you ask me for a Coke, I'm bringing you a Coca-Cola because that is Coke. It even says it on the side of the can. Like half of them just say Coke now. Like I don't think they say Coca-Cola on some of the cans anymore. But yeah, so that was one of those things was Coke, and I've always called it soda.
Yeah, and for me, even today, it's pop. I mean, on occasion, I will break down and throw in a soda there, but it's pop. But yeah, and speaking of Coke, that kind of ties back in with that documentary show you mentioned, the food that built America, because Coke is definitely one of those cornerstones of a company that helped really shape the company in a lot of the country in a lot of ways. So.
Yep. Another story of a brilliant addict getting screwed over by a rich guy. Ha 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 ha. That's a theme.
Yeah. Speaking of that, let's talk about Seth MacFarlane.
Is he a brilliant addict? I don't know.
No, no, no. He's. I've always gotten the impression he was just like a dorky guy or something like that. He's like the rich, nerdy, shy, quiet guy. So just benign. But he recently came out on Twitter and had some comments about his show being on Fox, and which would beg the question: why, after all this time, why is it a problem for him? Basically, his issue at hand is. Oh, come on, open it up. There we go. Before we started recording, I was like, this is going to be so streamlined. I just press a button and it works, and it didn't work. But basically, with Fox News, it relates to Fox News basically, and what Seth MacFarlane's tweet is this: Tucker Carlson's latest opinion piece once again makes me wish Family Guy was on any other network. Look, Fox, we both know this marriage isn't working anymore. The sex is only once a year. I don't get along with your mother, and well, I've been having an affair with NBC.
Oh my God. Yeah. Wow. So is that really like a legit announcement that he's leaving Fox?
He's already his production company, Fuzzy Door, already signed a production deal with NBC. And like, I know on Peacock right now he does have the at-home variety show, which is not anything big, but he does have other content in the works, like a remake of Smokey and the Bandit for Peacock, which I'm wondering how he's going to pull that off. But yeah, if it, obviously in the history of the show, we've talked about 20th Century Fox selling their content to Disney. So at this point, Family Guy is owned by Disney. Fox is just simply, because of the contract in place, still allowing that show on the air, because they do like money after all.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting question, because Family Guy throughout the years, I'm going to be honest, has even though Seth MacFarlane, I agree with him politically and stuff. I think Family Guy, I would be lying if I didn't say that Family Guy over the years has been problematic. So it's tough hearing this about a TV show that has been open to insulting everybody the way they have, which is not to say that there isn't value in that type of humor. I mean, I love that show because I realize it is what it is. It's just simple, broad farce. But, it's like, on the one hand, I get what he's talking about, because like if the God shined a light on me and I was able to get something in Hollywood, I would not want to work with Fox either. I get that sentiment, but it's like, do I need to hear that from him?
Right. It is kind of a hell of a way to be like, fuck you, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's also been on the record too about the fact that he felt creatively Family Guy shouldn't be around anymore, because really it's kind of like the same thing that The Simpsons has done. It's like they've really told all the stories they could tell. Now it's like rehashing old stories or just going bizarre.
Right, or pivoting so much, and then you go back, because then you go back to kind of more of the original way the show went, and then you can tickle nostalgia bones for a little bit. Like, I don't know, I haven't watched Family Guy in so long, and even then I wasn't a devout watcher or a devout consumer of the show.
Yeah.
Actually, I have personal reasons that I just don't really care for Family Guy all that much, and it's stupid because it's being picked on stuff that literally has nothing to do with the show.
Yeah.
But so it running for so long, plus having a little bit of negative connotation, I'm just like, nah, I wouldn't miss it personally. But I guess there's some diehard fans out there that would probably be really bummed that it's going away, though. But when it comes down to it, it's like, hey, isn't it kind of the number one piece of advice? If you don't like who you work for, then quit. And if the cost of quitting is that one creative content when he has other options, it makes sense that he's going to quit, whether you agree with it or not, whether you love the show or not. I can't argue with somebody wanting to leave because they don't want to be associated with shit that their boss is doing. So I will give kudos for at least that being why. Like, yeah. It's not over something like money. It's not over something, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't like the stuff that you guys are kind of doing. I don't support Fox, and I don't want to give Fox revenue anymore. Because, right, it makes money off of his show. So if he pulls out of that, in a way, he's starving it a little.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously Fox, being a TV network, would look for something else and put their money into that, or move a show that already has an existing on. I mean, it's TV. It's like one show leaving a network is not going to kill that network. But having said that, it's like, it's nice to see someone potentially standing up to Fox, and if it takes a big name to do that, to kind of start the ball rolling, then maybe that's a good thing. But
exactly, because yeah, sure, it's just one show. It won't hurt over just one show. But who else is gonna not want to work with Fox now and maybe take lead of like, hey, this is right. Like, we can totally do the same thing that Seth MacFarlane did. So if it does cause a chain reaction, that could be interesting, because they'd probably try to bring something back or nostalgia grab, but if anybody producing and having rights to anything doesn't want to work with them, this could potentially mean something. It will be interesting to follow if anybody else starts pulling their content from Fox.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, I mean, that's we'll see what happens going forward. As far as Family Guy, I mean, more than likely with the because that's one of their stable shows on Fox. So even though it doesn't have the audience it used to, there's a reason that it's been on for this long. It has, to your point, has a core audience. So at this point, I can just see them keeping it on the air until the current contract runs out. And who knows what'll happen at that point. But I do hope more and more people stand up, because obviously Rupert Murdoch is not going to change anything at his network. We know he has no morals, because he has no problem letting Tucker Carlson scare, like your grandma and grandpa in Nebraska about not getting the vaccine. But who's one of the first to get it? Rupert Murdoch. So
yeah, I think John Cleese was actually throwing some shade on Rupert Murdoch, because I follow John Cleese, so when he gets really active on the Twitters, I'll get the little notifications, and I don't always click on them, but so yeah, check out some of what he's been saying. He's been following some interesting stuff.
And Cleves would have probably a better understanding of him too, because if you think about it, like Rupert Murdoch has been involved in the American entertainment industry since about the 80s, but well before that, he was involved in the Australia entertainment industry and the Great Britain entertainment industry. He owned a lot of those nasty British tabloids that put our tabloids system to shame. Just the evil people that will do whatever they can to get a photo of a celebrity, just so the masses can pretend they are going to be the boyfriend of Chris Hemsworth or something.
Yeah, that's a whole level of Hollywoodism that I don't understand, but yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about mountain climbing.
Yes, I do have active hobbies. One of them is that I am a mountaineer, my personal self. One of the original marriage idea for myself and the Mr. Reverend was to summit Mount Hood there in Oregon and get married by our climbing partner, and have two already experienced mountaineers there to act as the two witnesses. So it was going to be the smallest possible wedding party on the top of a mountain. That being said, I get interesting Google recommendations on mountain climbing. And one of them was about a young mountain climber. I want to get over here. I think it's Selena Kawaja, and I am sorry if I am butchering that name. If somebody can look up a phonetic on that one, I had a hard time finding it before the show. But she is apparently a 12-year-old prodigy mountain climber. I guess she's done Everest. And with this particular mountain, and I want to preface a lot of this, climbing Mount Hood for a wedding was to involve a lot of very technical training, which is why this story kind of is one of particular interest. I know how dangerous this thing is, okay? It's something that you do need to take with kind of a sense of seriousness, and you can't take it too skippy, lighthearted when you're up there. A slip can be deadly for you and your entire party. So just to kind of really set the level of these mountains this child is doing, okay? So she's 12 years old, and apparently she's trying to take Broad Peak with her father. Then the father gets sick. So they have to medvac the father out. They say, the girl wanted to do it. She wanted to do it. She still wanted to do it. So, but anyway, the girl winds up not completing it either and getting pulled out, is kind of what the initial story was. And then I guess a lot of what's been coming out over a little bit of time is, people are saying that it almost sounds like in situations that this child maybe doesn't want to do this sport. Something that kind of made me question it is if she's climbing partners with her father. Something that's great about the Mr. Reverend and I is that when we do it as partners, we are close enough in size that if we were tethered to each other, which often you are. So if somebody falls, you can actually you stick an ice pick in the ground and you self-arrest, and then you can help pull them up, because this does happen. Like, not always, you want to avoid it, but these are the things that you're supposed to be training and preparing for. But if you've
Right.
got a 12-year-old child strapped to an adult male, and I guess there was a person there with them, and I'll get into that with reading some of the tweets I wanted to get into. Of mostly, the Reverend Tracy is over here thinking that Z is not very sure how much this child wants to do it or how safe this is. So essentially, some people that pass them, because this is Broad Peak is a famous peak. There were other climbing teams there. When the Mr. Reverend and our climbing partner have been up on the mountains, we have come across other teams, and Mount Hood is not as popular as this. But, like on St. Helens, we crossed another team. So there are other people that saw this child and said that it did not seem like she wanted to do it. And then there was an interesting slew of very angry tweets that came out, and I might just share the news article and let people read these and sit here and try to read them. But I'm just curious if anybody else has the same opinion that I do, that these do not sound like they're coming from a 12-year-old child. There's also this weird, interesting side topic of, wait a second, she's 12. She shouldn't even have Twitter, because Twitter's 13 and up, I think, is the deal with that right now. Yeah. Okay. So anywho, goes into stuff like saying, I never told this person that I didn't want to do the climb. And if you're going to tarnish my reputation, I will sue, threatening to sue that person for trying to, quote, tarnish my reputation, end quote. Other things of I know my rights and I know how to protect them, and I have a team of lawyers to do so. So doesn't really sound like a 12-year-old girl tweeting to me, which leads me kind of into this side topic. I'm an advocate for children's rights. In general, I think there could be certain protections that are at question here of what is too young to encourage certain level of sportdom, right?
Yeah.
Because if it exists out there, we've seen it in the pageant world, where there's really sometimes this unhealthy level of making your child compete and things like that. So I could see that being a case here. I'm not going to say that's for sure what's going on. Okay. I'm not going to pretend to be in the family of this 12-year-old and her father and their climbing habits. I'm sure sometimes when I'm hoofing it up a mountain and I'm tired, I don't look like I want to fucking be there either. So I'm not saying that it's all correct, but it did really kind of lead me down this thought black hole of what's too young to encourage this, so that we're not accidentally kind of encouraging a child to essentially be abused in kind of a really weird and public way. It takes me to, these children, they have no rights in this sense. So it's almost just as much as the Britney Spears conservatorship. It's so blatantly wrong when you're commanding an adult to, you must live in Vegas, you must do these shows, you must create this content. But are we maybe turning a blind eye to problems like this when it comes to, children performers, or especially some of these that are just really dangerous sports, where I know there's kind of this pissing contest in the climbing world of the youngest so-and-so to do this climb, or the youngest to summit this peak. So do we not maybe have a little bit of responsibility there to make an age cutoff to avoid that, now that it's dropped below the age of 18, right? Because doesn't that become about the parent going for a pride point than the child actually accomplishing something?
Well, I mean, if you think about combat sports, for instance, I mean, there are definitely regulations. You're not going to get a 6'5", 260-pound person facing off against a 5 foot tall, 100-pound person ever. You're not going to do that. So in terms of climbing, especially with it being so dangerous for even the most hardened, trained professionals, you got to, even no matter how much desire, how much passion this kid has for climbing, it's you sometimes the passion and common sense don't meet, and you need a body of some sort to say you can't do that now. That doesn't mean discourage them from not climbing. You can certainly attest to the level of climbing abilities that are available in like climbing studios, climbing gyms, stuff like that. There's plenty you can
Yeah.
do.
There's a lot of age appropriate training that can be done until you are of maybe a better age to handle things like that. You know what I mean? Um, but I think there might need to be some sort of limit because it is interesting. You are supposed to get permits to do these things, but it's not really anything that's like super crazy. You usually fill out something at the begin of like at Mount Hood. It's right there off the side to the lodge of where skiing is. Like it's the same little area where like skiers are kind of walking through. There's a little area in there. You fill out this page, you stick it in a box, and then you leave. And it's your responsibility to let somebody know that you have gone to a dangerous activity.
Mhm.
We let people know so that we don't come back and say, hey, we made it, it was great, here's a photo of the summit, that they can call a number and they will go check that box of, okay, they did this form, but did they ever do the return slip, because you're supposed to drop something off whenever you're done too.
Right.
So that's what they check. So it's not like a super formal system to get a permit, but I'm wondering if there should be maybe some age appropriateness. We don't let children go and ride motocross and uh, or like some of the motor vehicle stuff. Like we don't let them just go and do that on the street, like just casually, just because they do it, in their backyard or whatever. But there's practice that I think could be more appropriate, and other hobbies that would support maybe that long-term goal when they're maybe a little bit older. But it was just something interesting, and it can be applied to so much, because
Hmm.
it can be applied to like some of these YouTube stars we see happening younger and younger. It goes back to kind of being similar to the pageant stuff and how we kind of recognize there is a lot of toxicity in that world sometimes. So yeah, it's stories like this that make me question if maybe that's bleeding out into other areas too. And I do know that we've got some young Olympians even that's worth talking about. But I'm not, again, I'm not saying that they don't want to be Olympians, they don't want to do it, but is there maybe limits that should be imposed because we don't want that pageant type toxic stuff to end up pushing kids into doing things they don't really want to do.
Yeah, and that's always going to be the tricky part because, how much regulation do you want as a parent to give the government in terms of them telling you what you can and cannot do with your kids? And, even when it comes to sports like this, I could, playing devil's advocate, I could see somebody replying that, obviously with a kid with a motor vehicle, it's a bigger device. They don't have the muscular structure to be able to handle that, but in climbing they may be able to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's my point though, is like I'm not sure that that's there. And I'm me, I am not one to tell kids that they can't do something.
Hmm.
Okay, now do they have the muscular ability? Yeah, sure, but there's like just kind of a physics and weight thing
Hmm.
that really matters when you're especially like in tandem climbing and doing some of these summits, which I would imagine this child would actually be roped to their father. I don't know, part of me wants to go see if they have any videos of what they do. But yeah, just really the concept in general of the idea that this child maybe doesn't want to do this sport that is actually inherently dangerous, like begs a question of should there be a children's rights issue looked into. Because as far as the whole argument of, oh, but then you're letting the government regulate your kids, well, they already can't work anymore because of child labor laws. So maybe that's not necessarily the best argument to not look into what might be good for more kids. I don't know about you guys. I'm kind of pro less abusive situations and anti like kind of setting up and leaving things open so that abuse can easily happen.
And what I would think would be a perfect thing would be if like you have a 12-year-old that's fascinated in climbing and they spend the ages of 12 to 18 in proper climbing gyms with proper coaches training. By the time they're 18, they're going to be climbing a mountain like they've done it for years. They're going to be much better prepared to do it that way. And I get, wanting to, when you're a kid, you want to tackle the world and do everything, I guess, but you have to, as a parent, you do have to tell your kids when it's time. Like, I don't get the parents that allow their kids to get like flight licenses, that allow their kids to fly planes and all that. Like, sorry, I would never have done that with my kids ever.
Well, I mean, to be fair, that is your kids. That's more teaching. I don't know. That does seem kind of dangerous though, because is their phone at least away? But if, I guess I could be pulled on that one. My reaction at that one was like, oh, but I've been flying before, and it's like, yeah, but maybe there's a point there to that one as well, because it is dangerous. It could also easily put other people in danger, as can falling down a mountain, by the way. Because
Yep.
we go back to, there are other teams on these mountains, and if you don't think some of these falls can't be deadly or affect other teams, uh, you can Google that. There are plenty of stories, and I don't need to actually spout them off here because they exist in plenty. There's actually accident reports in ice and climber magazines to talk about how some of this stuff happens.
And I think it was on Last Week Tonight, John Oliver mentioned like on Mount Everest, so many people visit Mount Everest that there have been times to where people will be injured on the mountain, but people cannot go up and get them due to the amount of tourists that are there.
Exactly. And I actually think it was I might have to look this up because I think it was actually the Bergschrund in Mount Hood that there were death casualties, and
Hmm.
it very much involved a climber falling and hitting another group of people. Because there was like a helicopter, I think, that tried to go that wound up not making it. I think it was Mount Hood, but I will totally double check that. I mentioned off air, part of the funness of getting adapted is I'm on a little bit of a lag of getting official internet, but this recording's going smoothly and I'm not going to fuck with my bandwidth while we're recording.
Damn right. So we'll save that for next time.
Yeah, so I will have an update, or it'll be in the Facebook group for sure if it was Mount Hood. But I'm pretty sure, because Bergschrund, by the way, I know that's a technical term, that's just an opening in the ice that happens. So it's like an ice cave. And it
Hmm.
is one of the things that you can risk falling into. If you're on some of these mountains and it happens to be a season where it's open, or when it's thin over it, is when it can be dangerous. Just side nerd out, a little bit of knowledge I could drop about, why I would question a 12-year-old child doing these things.
Yeah, yeah. And me, I'm just glad I'm a misanthropic recluse. I would not be on a
Oh my gosh, we're actually excited. We still have our ice picks there with a friend because we do want to do Mount Hood at some time.
mountain.
So I will be back to do that. Not in October though. I'll be focused on other things. Which, side note, yeah, the Reverend will be back in Portland, Oregon, for 6 weeks around October timeframe. So
Yes.
also down for some fun ideas. If you guys are like, hey, well, you guys are together, here's an idea. But yeah, we're gonna try to think of some stuff while I'm in town. Just a little bit of a side note between our stories there.
Yes, I think we do have at least one live episode in the works, live out and about in town, hopefully more. Those are always fun ones, but let's move on here. We had an interesting week in the legal system. Scarlett Johansson is suing Disney over the profits from Black Widow. Tell the folks your thoughts.
So, yes, I read this article. It came up at some point into my awareness, and I was a little bit disappointed at first because my perception overall, the suing is going on because of the at-home releases, which is something that I am a big fan of. I've talked about that here on the show about being able to really enjoy catching a new movie while the excitement was still high with my stepkids and my partner. So I was a little bummed because I like Scarlett Johansson that she was suing over this. I do understand that she has the right to, but it takes me into the whole, but it's a pandemic And I was all for encouraging people to stay home. And I really have been happy to see a lot of the actors and other big people that I like encouraging the idea of people staying home, especially now with the Delta variant being what it is, where we are essentially right back where we were last year. But hopefully with a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more willingness to hopefully wear a mask so that it doesn't get as bad. But I don't know. I saw a picture of Lollapalooza, and so it's not looking very good, folks. I think we're failing a second summer in a row.
Speaking of that, I turned on like 5 minutes of Lollapalooza. Didn't understand the music that was there, so I'm officially old now. But looking through the audience, like I saw two people with masks. Apparently, they were requiring people to be vaccinated to attend, but it was a free concert in Chicago with over 100,000 people. How could they properly regulate that? They would not be able to.
Well, just side note, it doesn't fucking matter anymore because the Delta variant has
Exactly.
already become predominant enough, and they've already decided vaccinated people aren't protected fully from it. It's not as effective, at least. They're still figuring out how. I need to look that up again, like just to stay current on it myself. But the news is already broken that we can at least pass it. So it's right back to we should be wearing masks and staying away, and we're right back to just everybody justifying the yeah but me's.
Yep.
But there is no yeah but me. There is no yeah but I'm vaccinated. Unfortunately, I don't know, this is where we're at again. So with us being there again, I am bummed out to see anybody kind of suing and discouraging over the idea of releasing content at home. Now I know Tim, I really want to continue because we had started to have some back and forth about this. So I'm going to let him go on his thing now about what he was saying to me.
Okay. Now, I don't agree with that take, and here is why. The situation is this: when she signed that contract, first of all, we're talking a contract that was signed, I believe, in 2017. No pandemic there, and part of that agreement was that she would get paid X amount of money, plus she would also there would be a profit sharing system to where she'd be able to share in part of the profits for the box office, which for these types of movies is a common thing, because if you think about it, these movies aren't guaranteed to be hits. So having it be like a profit sharing thing, you're able to save a little bit of money in terms of the salary on the hopes that it's a big thing. Everybody kind of, has to work together at that point to make a hit. And I love incentive-based pay. I think incentive-based pay is a good thing. But obviously the pandemic hit. And what happened is that Disney did decide to make the pivot to have same day release in both theaters and on the Disney Plus Premier Access. And here's where it gets tricky, because there are a couple things to keep in mind. Like the Disney Premier Access, I didn't realize it until like about a week after we did it. But when we purchased Black Widow here, we found out that when you spend that $30 to purchase that movie on Premier Access, what you are doing is essentially telling the Disney Plus service that as long as you have a subscription, you get access to that movie. So I can watch Black Widow however many times I want, and I don't have to pay again because I've already paid. Whereas if it had been like a pay-per-view type of thing, and then this lawsuit came, that would be a different thing. But they killed their home theater or their home video market because of this, because everybody that took advantage of purchasing it for the Premier Access on Disney Plus is going to be able to watch it whenever they want. And it's that, and just she and her agents did go to Disney before going to court. They did go to Disney and say, hey, yeah, we have a chance to fix this. Obviously, we are in unique times. There is precedent in the movie industry. In December 2020, for instance, Wonder Woman 2, Wonder Woman 84 was put onto HBO Max. And what Warner Brothers did is they went to Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot, who both had similar deals that Scarlett Johansson had with Black Widow, and said that because of the pandemic, we can't honor this contract, but let's make it right by, giving you some money some other way. Everybody was happy. Scarlett Johansson, with her people, approached Disney to have a deal of this sort happen. Disney did not do anything. When it came to the Black Widow marketing, if you look at any of the videos that Scarlett Johansson recently did for the marketing, look at her body language. She's happy. She's having fun. She's chatting, with not only the interviewer, but the co-stars that she's doing the interview with. Not once did she mention that she was having these problems with Disney. She didn't look glum. She didn't try to tank the movie. She did try her best to go out there and sell people on this movie, but Disney, by not wanting to talk to her, by also doing this premiere access thing, which again, I bought it, so I'm glad I have this access, but it doesn't make sense because with a movie has to be marketed different than a TV show. Otherwise, it's not going to be special. It's going to be forgotten. And they treated this like essentially a one episode TV show. And they lost out on a lot of money like that. And basically, in my opinion, this is a case of Disney using the pandemic as an excuse to try to get the public to have negative feelings towards Scarlett Johansson so that they could, somehow, if it ever did go to trial, somehow have a bargaining chip or something like that. Now, let's be honest here. In the grand scheme of things, 6 months from now, we're probably going to hear that her and her lawyers had some kind of settlement. There's going to be a settlement. I don't think this is going to go to trial, but in my opinion, it was important for her to step forward and do this because if Disney is breaking their contract with a star of her caliber, they're certainly doing it with people that don't have the power Scarlett Johansson has. And if somebody in power does not step up and say, this is wrong, it needs to change, it's not going to change. And, word coming out is that Kevin Feige, the overlord of the Marvel Universe, he has essentially been upset at how things have happened. He encouraged the Disney people to, speak with her people in order to work out something, because again, something should have been worked out. Disney made the commitment to pay her in a certain way. And by, putting it on the Disney Plus, they screwed that. And last but not least, I thought it was, I laughed, but it was one of those the sad laughs, because on the Roku last night they had an advertisement for the new Marvel movie that's coming out in September, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and very clearly on that advertising it said only in theaters. So there's a lot more going on here, and basically Disney, in my opinion, with the statement that they came out knocking Scarlett Johansson, basically stating that it's a pandemic, why is she doing this, and also telling the world her salary. That saying that she got paid $20 million, essentially that's not enough. She wants more. It's like Disney has to honor their contract. If this is, look at how bad this country is in terms of regulating like monopolies. Disney is as close as we're going to get to an entertainment monopoly. If we don't fight them on this, what's going to stop them from doing worse?
Oh, and you know what? It didn't even take my own mind long to play my own devil's advocate on this, because we know that the Reverend is not what you would call a fan of Disney. I've even said that I have no problem using a friend's Disney Plus. I don't feel guilty about it because I don't want to give them money. And I know they still get credit for stuff that I watch, but at least I'm not paying them money. For some reason, that makes me feel better about it. We talked about that. I thought it was really stupid that they wouldn't have a dead child have the one thing they wanted, which was Spider-Man on their tombstone. So and then suing the school for playing whatever it was they played. But, so I'm no fan of Disney. So it didn't even take me long to be like, yeah, but I bet this is the only way, like, because they'll sue somebody else at the drop of a hat. You know what I mean? So in a way, it's almost very karmic. And now knowing what I know about, Scarlett's people did try to go to Disney. And then, of course, like, oh, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all that she was the type of person to still promote the show. But it is refreshing to know that she still handled it with some grace and, some professionalism, really, because that's your job. Yeah. That's like, you can't have a little pout fest just because you didn't get your way with your boss at work. Like, I mean, just look for another job if it goes back to the other conversation, I guess, right? Yeah. But Yeah, that does make a lot more sense. See, like I can have my mind changed. I'm happy to have had and finished and fleshed out this conversation with you. But yeah, that makes more sense. And Disney, maybe they just deserve to be sued, like karmic justice style. Just smack them
Yeah.
around a little with the lawyers.
Yeah, especially since, them being the company that helped spur the extension of copyrights in this country for as long as they have. I mean, long term, they did have done some damage to creativity, and also when it comes to lawyers that will sue at the drop of a hat for things like that. Like, I get, if somebody took a story and like crossed the name of the author off and put their name on and tried to pass it off and make money off of that, take that person to court. I get it. But, when Disney is like suing people for making a character that may share some characteristics with something, but it's something being done original, it's just like it's stifling creativity, and I don't like that. So yeah, fuck
Yeah.
Disney.
Oh well, and really, they could have done this better. And I think it was my brother on in the Friends Talking Nerdy group that you guys we all kind of went a little bit back and forth
Mhm.
about, pay-per-view is not a new concept. They could have done this like that. They could have done even kind of a mix of the two. Of
Mhm.
yeah, while it's out in theaters, you need to pay X number of dollars per time to watch it. But hey, if you paid for it even once during that time, once it's released, you have it. Like once
Yeah.
it's done being in the theater run. Like I'm just saying they could have been creative and like found other ways to deal with it too. Like not even just how they dealt with the actor, but in how they dealt with the content, to kind of keep it that special. And because normally, box office, a lot of those numbers come from repeat watching too. I don't know if you noticed, they don't scan you and be like, is this your first time watching this film? They usually just let you buy the ticket. And so it all goes towards it. So there's a few ways that it sounds like they fucked this one up and that they could have possibly maybe talked it out, done it better, especially like just straight refusing to talk to the actor about it seems really fucked in the head.
Yeah, and then their statement after the fact, I mean, we are talking about rich people. I mean, Scarlett Johansson has more money than she has any than she will have time to spend it. But, we cannot support a corporation screwing anybody because look at Amazon, for instance. Like if you remember a couple months back, they had one of the Amazon warehouses in Alabama that was voting for unionship, that the people that worked there ended up saying they didn't want the union. But word coming out now is that the National Labor Relations Board is finding that Amazon was guilty of a lot of interference in that, like even putting in a ballot box in a place they were not supposed to like monitor it. But anyway, corporations kind of suck. Let's move on to a wonderful story, a story that made me smile when I read it. Let's talk about Dolly Parton.
Oh my gosh, I love Dolly Parton. I just know that she has given the rights to, because she wrote I Will Always Love You. Wasn't that the deal? Because that was something we even talked about on the Battle of the States.
Yes.
But, the most memorable, the most iconic version of it was Whitney Houston. And she has, in honor of Whitney Houston, now the royalties to that song are going somewhere special now, correct?
Yeah, it's not all of the royalties, but she's taken some of it because she still gets a sizable amount of money from the Whitney Houston cover. Because the money you make in music is more in the publishing side of things. So the fact that Whitney Houston sang this popular cover, she makes a lot of money, but she took some of that and invested it in an African American neighborhood in Nashville. And she was on record as stating that because this was from Whitney Houston, she felt it was important that she reinvest back into the African American community to do that. And I thought that was wonderful news. I think that's leading by example. And and she's the one person, like if there is anybody in your life that is bad mouthing a Southern person, you just say Dolly Parton, now shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
Because
Dolly Parton is a saint. She is an American treasure. Leave Dolly alone.
yeah.
I really love Dolly Parton. I've been to Dollywood, her little theme park in It's cute. It's charming. It's worth checking out. It's hilarious.
That's
I
where the professor was born in that area. So she's been to Dollywood numerous times and even has a Dollywood shot glass.
Nice. I may, who knows, because I'm closer to this side of the country now.
Hmm.
So I may try to take a trip down there at some point because I do really want to explore like some of the stuff around here because you're so close, like New York to Boston to Salem. But yeah, I remember I have fond memories of Dollywood. I went there on a band trip one year in high school, and I just remember thinking it was funny. Like I think I was taller than the tallest roller coaster there, but
Yeah.
I don't think that's actually true. That's being hyperbolic. But it was really funny because, in high school in Texas and really all throughout middle school, high school, your big reward was to go to Six Flags Over Texas. So they're like the full size roller coasters, which is not what you will have at Dollywood, but you will have a fair amount of charm and a really awesome montage of music the entire time.
And you know why she did that? You know why she built Dollywood, right?
No, I
Uh,
actually do not.
that is her hometown, and the reason she built that, I guess there, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was like a factory or something that was there that left, and a lot of people were left unemployed. So she created Dollywood not as a temple to herself, but as a way to give people in her hometown work.
Nice.
So again, another great Dolly Parton story. It's like you don't even have to be a fan of her music to just be a fan of her as a human being, because if more celebrities on either side of the fucking aisle did this instead of being assholes, I think the world would be a better place.
Well, I mean, she kind of encompasses one of the mantras that I try to do in life. Like, Dolly isn't anti a lot of things, she's pro a lot of things. And see, there's an attitude difference there that I think is missing with a lot of people. Like, I rub elbows with a lot of activists, one might say. And, to me, there's a big difference in human to be pro things and not anti things. Like to want to see demographics succeed and do well, but not necessarily take that to mean you must be against something else. You can be pro without being anti. I could have a totally own separate soapbox on that concept, but it's something I really love about her and I find endearing about her. And she's why, I secretly wanted to be Dolly Parton in a weird way when I grew up, but not Dolly Parton, like all of that, like, but she's quite known for her breast disease. Let me say, she's got large breasts.
Yes.
But anyway, so not necessarily that, just that she's a very good person. I understand she comes from a humble, hard background. She's great.
Yes, definitely so. Definitely so. So just wanted to share that before we get to our final topic here. But someone's had a birthday. A couple of days ago, MTV had its 40th birthday. And I think for our final topic here, we'll talk a little bit about MTV, a little bit about its history, because we both came at it from different eras. Even me, there was an era before me that I didn't get to see on MTV. But it will talk about the fact that it's like people know of it now, but like if you turn on the channel now, it's like a depository of reruns.
Right? Like even Beavis and Butthead, when they came back for their little nostalgia grab rendezvous, which I think they actually did it right in a way, because it was almost like they came back to make a point that MTV wasn't MTV anymore.
Yeah.
Because that's what they did. Because that was my time of MTV. Mine was the Beavis and Butthead times. And of course, my mother couldn't stand that I watched it. So of course, my father loved letting us watch it when we were at his house on the weekends. It was a whole thing. So that was my experience. I watched it about every other weekend, and it was a lot of music videos, which I loved it because sometimes, they'd have the lyrics, and it goes back to my hearing being shit. And I would, if you were lucky when the CD came out, the case had the lyrics in there for you. But that was rarely the case. So every now and then it's like, hey, I can lyrics, and sometimes I could read their lips and stuff with my hearing stuff. And then Beavis and Butthead, and they were always showing clips of music videos. And even when they came back to make fun of the fact there's no music videos, they like blatantly made fun of it in one of the, reboot episodes because it was all just reality TV crap.
Yeah.
And they kind of were highlighting that it was all reality TV crap.
And that's what it's like, I get that channels like that, they're built for a specific market, and I've aged out of that market a long time ago. So I'm not asking them to market it towards me, but it's like I do wonder what they're marketing at these days, because it's like, like in my era, they were marketing for like the 20 somethings. I think at the start of your era and the further the 90s went along, they started skewing a little bit younger, but like now I don't even know what they're, apart from the reruns, and it's like the reruns don't have anything to do with TV. And that's another thing too. It's like, why don't I didn't have a problem when they had a show like MTV Unplugged, or like if with Behind the Music on VH1. I mean, it may be a documentary, but it's about music. Like, that's why I'm forgiving for like Pawn Stars on the History Channel, because even on Pawn Stars they'll have historical items and they talk about it, and it's a way to kind of tie it in. But they don't even do that anymore, and that's the kind of the sad part, because at one time MTV was the trend setting place you went. I mean, MTV was responsible for making wrestling popular, believe it or not. Before the first WrestleMania, there was the War to Settle the Score on MTV, and that was used to create WrestleMania. But they had like, the MTV people had like Andy Warhol at a wrestling event and stuff and fun stuff. But I don't know, just I even miss the videos, but I get why they don't necessarily play the videos all day now. But reading the article that I did read in question, it made me ask, like, why couldn't they go back to videos? Because like cable today, the majority of people on cable are people my age, the original market. So why doesn't the MTV cable channel kind of pivot back to playing for the 40 somethings? Because it was great, back in the day with MTV being able to sample all kinds of different music. And if it became like just a video jukebox again, I think that would be so much better. You could play that in a waiting room instead of, whatever. I don't know. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I think it could totally use a refresh one way or the other. It's like either go back to actually being MTV music television, or maybe consider rebranding, like in general, so you're no longer music television. But it just depends, because I don't know if they never play any music related content.
The article said they play in a 1 week period, 1 hour and 10 minutes worth of music.
Okay, gotcha. So that kind of clarifies. But so maybe most of your content could use to be at least music related, because I mean, even you brought up the History Channel, and the History Channel has some cool history stuff. And then you can also see, okay, well, Pawn Stars, but then they also have Ancient Aliens. And then they also have a few other like reality type shows. And then it's like, there's also shows like on the Learning Channel that Natasha Leggero, one of my favorite comedy albums ever is Coke Money by Natasha Leggero. And she makes fun of the fact of I didn't know I was pregnant is on the Learning Channel. And I think like Toddlers and Tiaras was on there too. I think like a lot of reality TV is just seeping into networks in general, because they're just trying to fill space with what works. So yeah. I think maybe MTV just made like that classic mistake of, oh my God, everybody's into reality TV. And so they stuffed as much reality TV like cheese into consumer goods to get as much of it into our culture as possible, because they thought that maybe that's what people would really, really want. And it turns out, I think people are kind of starting to get tired of reality TV. Well, and really they're getting most of it just by stalking people online these days. So maybe it's just not as fulfilling as it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, reality, the reason TV networks do reality TV is that it's cheaper to do than, doing like a fictional series, like a drama or a comedy or something like that. It costs far less. So, financially, I get why they do that. But again, at least make a little effort to kind of tie it in. Now, granted, in my day on MTV, you did have different shows where I don't mind different types of shows that may highlight different types of culture, like, MTV Cribs or something like that. While that is not for me, you can certainly still tie that into a music experience. People have always loved like a lifestyle, the rich and famous type of show. It's just, it's no longer music. And yeah, to your point, it's the people that they're trying to get to that channel are on their mobile devices now.
Yep.
So the people that have cable, I'm part of the old folks group now. So it's having said that, the article did mention too that the fact that a lot of their core shows, like for instance, they had the Real World reunion where they took the cast of the very first Real World show and then essentially did a reunion show, but instead of putting that on MTV, it was only on Paramount Plus. They're bringing back MTV Unplugged, but it's only going to be on Paramount Plus. They're bringing back Behind the Music, but it's only going to be on Paramount Plus. So it's like they still want to milk what the name MTV or VH1 means to people, but they don't want to let the original thing that birthed this thing live, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like they're kind of oddly holding the content hostage online and not like, why not at that point just go ahead and put it back in rotation with other programs that play? Because at least again, you'd have more music related content, which makes more sense. And if that's what people want to the tune that you're putting it on your mobile platform, why not? It goes back to the why not? Why not loop it in? Like, it also is just kind of interesting, right? It's like, oh, well, there's content on your website that never plays on your core platform, your originating platform, your still running platform. If you're putting money into it, just pepper in some of the content people like.
And if you want to impress people of my advanced age, apparently, you want to give them a taste of what they could potentially buy. I mean, maybe you don't play the entire Real World Homecoming on MTV, but play an episode or two and be like, if you like what you see and you want to see the rest, come on over to Paramount Plus. Or play the series on MTV, but be like, come on over to Paramount Plus for extra scenes, extra content. You get live shows, you can chat. There's a lot you can do to integrate both the cable and the streaming size of it. Now, will MTV ever go back to being what it was the day it first turned on 40 years ago? No, those days are past. We have YouTube for a reason. That purpose is obsolete. However, with the branding of MTV Music Television, when people view that, you would think it would not be hard to have a music channel dedicated to music in some way, shape, or form. It could be something. What if they showed a movie, A Star Is Born, the Lady Gaga version? That would still be very much relevant. That would still be, cutting edge because she's still very much a new performer, but it's still not just playing a music video. There are things that they can do. I just wish they would do. And it's I don't know. It's like part of me is just like, I would want them to do something, but another part of me is like, am I just on a nostalgia high for what MTV used to mean for me? Is my world really going to end if MTV shut off its lights and never stayed on again? No, it's not. I mean, something else will come along that will be new and not obsolete. But here it is, MTV at 40. It's got growing pains. Who knows how long it will last? Will it make 50? Will it make 60? I think the name will. As far as the channel, who knows?
Yeah, let's see if we make it to them being 50, and then we can see if we have any right to talk. It's like 40 years, you didn't even make it 10.
Yeah. So we know what we're doing in 10 years from now. So.
We're going to have a reunion show, even if this isn't going on anymore, just to talk about MTV.
Yes, by that time, podcasts will be like brainwaves that you shoot. I don't know. I think that will wrap it up for us this week. Did you have anything else you wish to bring up to our audience?
No, I think I'm done talking. I have to go try to figure out how to do the other things that I do when I'm not being the Reverend. So.
And I have some math homework to look forward to. Yay me! I believe if all goes well, unless I pick a different career path, a degree path, this may be my very very last math class.
That's always an
Thank
exciting
goodness.
place to be. Yep, I think I'm just going to go eat a bunch of leftover ice cream and try not to pout too much about my emotional support human not being home.
Yeah.
I'm going to go have a pout now.
Yeah. At least you got beans, so there you go.
I do have beans. She's happy to be here. She's actually just walking. She's like, "What did you do with him?" Because I think she likes him more than me. I mean, to be fair, I dip her paws in ink and make her write notes to my stepdaughter. So, but we'll have pictures of that on the group.
Well, it's kind of the same way with Sherman now, because I with the attention I've been giving him lately, with him being sick, like he will end up being on my lap more often than not, but he's still very much, a mama's boy. He knows who his mama is, so he brought. So yeah, cats are cats. So anyway,
indeed, but yes, it was fun. Until next week, everybody.
Yes, pay attention on every Wednesday and Saturday in this podcast space. We will have something to entertain your ear holes. We bid you adieu.
Adieu.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.